Hi, welcome everyone. This is the Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation doing a webinar. Today we are talking about adapting school vision screenings and what we're doing to address the current environment that we find ourselves in with the pandemic. It's my pleasure to introduce Brad King and Matt Phillips. Brad has been with our program and with Lions for a number of years now. He's one of our field staff members who is also going out to schools and helping to coordinate and manage events on location. And then Matt is our program manager here in the office, who is the one that makes sure everything on the back end, from the data and the school coordination and the event coordination, and working with our team members and the technology that we use, that everything really works. And I'll give the two of you a chance to say hi to the audience. Brad? Okay, we will go ahead and continue on. So we're going to start with our first part of our discussion and just kind of give everybody in our audience a heads up that this is going to be a little bit different from some of our other webinars, is that it is going to be more of a discussion amongst us, and it gives us a chance to kind of share what it is that we're doing and addressing. And then I would hope that each of you, as you have questions, are able to type those to us. You'll notice that you have a questions section in your dashboard, is what generally called. You can type those questions in, you can say hi to me and I see those and I can pass your questions along as we can. And then we also have the chat, so you can chat to us. So there's different ways that we can kind of talk during these things from the audience members. And we do have quite a few attendees, and we're really appreciative of your time today. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our first slide, which is basically talking about, the environment that we're currently in. Right now, I know that Matt has been working with the entire team in order to get us all set up to pursue these screenings. And as we're able to, with the current COVID-19 pandemic being such a huge concern of all of ours. Matt, I know that the key thing that we've been talking about is safety is the priority. And if you would, please just kind of give us an idea of how we're making this safety a priority for all of our needed screenings and our team.
Sure. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. Basically, I also say I think the main audience today, we have a number of school personnel on the line who are going to know some of what's going on in their own school districts. And second, we have Lions Club members that our organization partners with to deliver these screenings. So and some of our own staff also are participating. So there's a variety of audience here to talk about different things. But as Brenda mentioned, we all agree that safety for everyone is the most important. We also understand that vision screenings are and other issues that students experience are key. Addressing issues with students is key to their both success in school and for children to reach their full potential in life. And our piece of that is to come in and provide vision screenings and take some burdens off of nurses who need to be dealing with lots of other issues at the school. So we believe that that's so key to students achieving their academic success. So of course, we want to come back and do these screenings as soon as everyone deems it's safe to do so. And we've been adapting our screening model in order to make sure that from our end, we can deliver a model that's going to be safe and adhere to social distancing guidelines. So let's see. So, right now the environment we're in, as we're talking about, we understand with the governor's opening metrics for schools that have been announced in the last couple of weeks and have been clarified in the recent couple of days, I believe, most school districts are not going to open to in-person instruction at the beginning of the school year. So, what that means for us is that we're paying very close attention to information coming out of the Oregon Health Authority, ODE, the governor's office, and trying to understand when schools might be in session and when collaborating with school districts to understand when it'll be safe to come back and do vision screenings.
Yeah. One of the things that I had, if I could, sorry. One of the things that I had read and was looking at is more recently, several of the rural districts, depending on the county and some of the metrics that they are looking at, may be able to open to more in-person sessions. And so I know some of our focus might be on reaching out to those schools in more rural areas.
Sure. And we've been hearing from a lot of school districts over the last few weeks, and what we've noticed is that most of them who we have communicated with so far have told us that their school district plans to be online until at least, somewhere between mid-October and mid-November, at least, depending on the school district. And as you mentioned, I don't know if we need to go. We probably don't need to do an overview of the governor's metrics here. Those are out and available, and I'm sure school districts are paying attention to them. But those metrics are here on that slide. And in the initial metrics I saw, I guess that are referenced here, I saw that there was a bit of a difference for the lower grades versus the upper grades, and part of that is I believe is due to basically health, the studies that have been done right now that talk about who's most at risk, and it sounds like those younger students are less at risk, and so it looks like the criteria for the younger students to be in schools in person are sort of less than what it would be for the older students. So we're also imagining that the younger students are the most likely ones to be in the schools when in-person classes resumes, and that it might be more challenging depending on what the environment is in terms of COVID for those older students to be in classrooms. So we'll be following that very closely, and speaking with school districts individually about what their process is. And then even some recent clarifications I saw didn't really address the grade levels at all, but talked about those rural schools, as you mentioned, Brenda. And initially I thought that had to do with school districts that were pretty rural and had 100 or less students in the entire district. And then a clarification that I saw today, a visual chart that described all those rules, talked about school districts with 75 kids total or less. So I know there will be some exceptions, but most schools, again, will be online for quite some time. And naturally, that means that any of our screenings probably for September and October, probably 90+% of them obviously would be postponed at the moment, and we'll just keep in close contact with school districts to find out, when they're back in session and where we fit in their priority list, where vision screenings fit, and work with them accordingly.
And I think it fits well as it can within the current goals. Of course, our screening process really is intended to identify those younger students who may have conditions that need to be treated. So if they're able to focus on those, kindergartners through, say, third graders, that really does, align with what the needs are as far as screening priorities go. I do think that's a good way for us to attempt to support the schools as they try and adapt what they're doing to this environment as well. I've got a question here. It looks like somebody noticing that, hey, if we have a screening scheduled right now, do we need to reach out to you to cancel and or reschedule that? Or is that going to be kind of more automatic? And I had kind of responded that we can reach out to those that are on the schedule, but if we're unsure of scheduling that, how do you want schools to be reaching out to you to coordinate?
Yeah, it's my plan right now. I have a sort of draft template email that will go out. It's kind of a mass email, so it'll go out to all districts, just asking them to clarify, especially if they're coming up soon in September or October, to clarify, how long they think their district will be online only, or to clarify if they're one of those tiny, rural districts where they're going to continue to go ahead with in-person instruction and vision screenings if they'd like. So basically, I'll put out an email to everyone and just ask for you to get back to us and let us know where you're at. We've heard from some folks sort of proactively already, and basically what we'll do is, and what we feel like at the moment makes the most sense, is we'll postpone your screening, but we won't necessarily talk right this moment about, well, what's that rescreening date look like? I think what we'll try to do is maybe on both sides is check in with you if you have a time frame or a date when your screenings are going to be online until November 1st. So maybe we check in with you mid-October to understand if there's any changes in your district and what at that time, because I don't want us to have to go back and forth a number of times to find a rescheduled date just to find that we're still going to be online and have to sort of cancel that too. So right now I think we would just postpone them sort of indefinitely, knowing that we'll check in as time goes on.
And if anybody ever has any questions for any of us, please don't hesitate to email. We're working obviously remotely for some of us, and we still have access to voicemail. We try and put our contact information out there so that we can be pretty responsive to questions that people have. So we are, like all of you, paying attention to what the guidelines are and how that impacts different things. I just wanted to kind of show this picture here. This is taken, before COVID-19 was quite a thing, and it just shows that there's some distance already built into our screening process, and it gives us an opportunity to work with that. And Brad's going to go over some of the details of what we've done in order to increase that distance, but still utilize our equipment in there. So right now we're at a point where we wanted to answer any questions that you might have about the environment. And Matt, one person mentioned that when in-person instruction does occur, many districts are going to be having maybe just half the students in the school at a time, so that they can do those variable schedules. And I thought that of course might extend and take longer for some of the screenings, but could you address that a little bit about those variable schedules that schools are looking at?
Sure, I think we may also address that later. I forget if it's exactly in the agenda, but we are aware that as schools come back, and a lot of them have these hybrid models, that it would take us coming out to a school at least twice in a week for those districts that might host, two days with half of the students, and then 2 other days during the week with the other half of the students. So we might have to come out twice in order to screen all the students, if the schools are still wanting to screen all the students. And then I've seen some other sort of just various models that vary from that a little bit. So we're prepared to come out and do what's needed to make it happen. We recognize that both what the school's schedules, our new equipment, the environment that we're going to be working in, screenings are going to be slower. And so honestly, where we've traditionally set up 2 screenings in a day, because we used to do 2 small schools, if we're actually going to be on those days, if we're going to be screening just as many students as we would have in the past, it might be impossible for us to host 2 screenings in one day. But if only half of the kids are going to be there, we may still be able to come out to school A and school B on Tuesday, and then come back to school A and B again on Wednesday, depending. But we know things are going to be a little slower, and so we're just gonna, I think somewhere in our presentation here, we just talk about how flexibility is the key, and I think everybody knows that in this pandemic. It's we'll do everything possible to make sure that we serve the schools the best we can, and we'll get the screenings done if we're able to do them one way or the other.
Certainly, flexibility is definitely going to be key. Well, at this point, it is my pleasure to introduce our Executive Director, Doug Thompson. And Doug is going to give us a little bit of an update on the status of state funding and what that has meant for us so far this year and what we're aware of. So, Doug, are you able to join us?
I am. Hi, hello everybody. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. And Matt, nice job in terms of giving a quick overview of the statewide metrics there. So I'm going to do this in a nutshell. The Oregon Department of Education, in light of the budget woes that the state of Oregon is facing, will be reducing their school vision screening fund by $800,000 in an effort to help the state rebalance their budget. What that means is that there still will be some funding remaining in the school vision screening fund. We believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $430,000 or so. So that rebalance, or that budget rebalance, was approved on Monday, I believe. I think it still awaits the governor's signature. But that's the premise that we're working on, that there still will be funds available. Based upon that number of dollars, of course, we won't be able to screen the 180,000 students that were screened last year by Lions, but we still feel that we can screen a significant number of students once schools are able to be open and are comfortable with us coming in and doing the screenings. There's a couple of little details in terms of the definition, in terms of what category we fall under. We don't think that as an education provider, as defined in the Senate bills that were passed to provide this fund, that we fall under the classification of a visitor. We do know that the Department of Education will significantly limit the number of visitors that enter Oregon public schools this year. But as an education provider, and again, we're still seeking clarification, we believe that we will fall under the definition of those that will be allowed to come in and do school screenings. Happy to answer any questions regarding the Oregon Department of Education fund that reimburses schools. And I'll do my best to try to address any questions regarding visitors and education providers.
Thank you, Doug. We do have a question asking, and our next slide also helps to address this, is how much does that reimbursement really cover for the foundation and the screenings?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I'm going to actually have Brad help answer this question also. For those unaware, the bill that was passed into law provides $3.20 per student. The reality is and it was already alluded to earlier, the reality is, we may have to visit a school twice to capture screening results for all of the students. So, our costs will go up. We will seek private funding to allow us to screen as many students as we possibly can. We have this vision that we created during a recent strategic planning process, where our goal one day is to have every student in Oregon to have their vision screened each year. At that time, there were 0 public dollars that made this possible. So we're quite prepared to continue to seek funding from the private sector. And Brad, why don't you talk a little bit about that effort so far, and how we're planning on raising dollars to subsidize the public funding.
Yeah, Doug, thanks. Welcome everybody. Thanks for signing up. I can tell you that your Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation is consistently working to raise funds for programs, particularly the flagship school vision screening program. And to date, or actually as of yesterday afternoon, the development office has worked hard and raised about $41,000 to complement the state funding. And that's from a variety of grant funding sources throughout the state. And there are more of those sources that we're waiting to hear from, and yet even more that we're waiting to apply to, because they have specific dates that they're open and close. So the work continues to supplement the state funding, and it's being fairly successful.
Thanks, Brad. Brenda, did I address the question?
You did. Thank you so much.
Okay, you bet.
Yeah.
Let me know if
so
you need any other questions answered.
Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate it. So one of the things that Matt had also emphasized was that does mean that available funding and what we can kind of count on, and what Brad mentioned for what we've been able to raise so far, and even what we anticipate raising. This is going to be one of those years where we just don't really know how many kids we're going to be able to screen. But what we are doing is prepping to be available to provide a quality and safe screening, safe for the students, safe for the teachers, safe for our staff. Screenings to approximately 100 to 150,000 students. That is compared to the 175,000 to 180,000 that we've screened past years. It's certainly not going to achieve those same numbers, but that's okay. We'll be very proud of what we're able to accomplish this year. It does quite a different change from what we had anticipated screening this year. We had really hoped to grow the program considerably and break that 200,000 student screened barrier, but that's okay. We'll hold off on that particular one. If anyone out there has any questions about the state funding and the updates and kind of the environment of what we've been working on, it's a good time for us to answer some of those. Looking at it, looks like some cautions, some concerns about the idea of going to different schools in one day and whether or not that's going to be safe. And I'm going to address some of the safety protocols that we're really implementing a little bit later. So I'll go ahead and address some of that. But seeing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next slide. And at this point, we mentioned here that we have, Matt, approximately an equivalent of 165,000 or more vision screenings, individual screenings on our schedule, though some of that, of course, are going to be postponed. Matt, do you want to kind of address a little bit about what we've currently got on the agenda or the schedule for this fall and spring?
Yeah, currently, so here this spring, obviously we sort of pre-schedule stuff for the following school year from the fall through the winter, before school let out, we had about 520 vision screenings scheduled for next year, which definitely represented, in total a possibility to screen upwards of 175,000 students. Of course, if you kind of look at the fact that there's always about 10% of kids that are absent, currently, as the slide says here, we have about 165,000 kids that would likely be screened if we conduct every vision screening that we have planned. And then even since then, we do know like there's one district that just decided, with all the other things going on, they don't just want to postpone for this year. They'd actually like to cancel for this year and just kind of relook at what's going to happen next year. So we understand that will happen a little bit as well. So, and we're also thinking about, I think the last bullet here on the slide talks about, if we're only going to screen somewhere between 100 to 150,000 students this coming year, and we have 165,000 students on our schedule right now, and there are even some school districts that didn't respond in the spring to schedule their screenings for, excuse me, this coming year. What does that look like? What are our priorities if we have to reduce vision screenings? And for one, I would just say it's actually hard to say exactly what we would do right now because we just don't know what the environment's going to look like in a month from now or 3 months from now. Again, because of just the metrics from the state on what's going to be safe in terms of bringing kids back into the school environment, we know that it's going to be quite likely that grades K through 3 are going to be the most likely students to come back, whereas the other students in the older grades may not come back early this year, as soon as school's open. Maybe they won't come back for the whole year. So it's likely, I imagine, since we often screen K through 5 or K through 8, depending on where we're at in the around the state, it's fairly likely that we'll be screening a smaller portion of students at each district or school than we normally would. So it may just be that what we end up screening kind of both lines up with the funding priorities and lines up with what's realistic for schools. So I don't necessarily anticipate that we'll have to be reaching out to tons of districts saying, we don't have the funding to do this. We're going to have to remove some screenings and figure out how. I think it'll kind of be a natural progression of just feeling out what happens throughout the school year. So let's see. Do you want to go back to that last slide? I was just curious if there was anything more I wanted to address there. So yeah, just as we talked about earlier, the K through 3 grades, that's what's in the current scenario. It's what is the safer age group to get kids back in schools, and it also sort of lines up, as Brenda mentioned earlier, just with those that sort of, the younger the kids are, the more priority the vision screening is. So I think that's really good. We already know that screenings will be slower. We know that volunteers may or may not be allowed both in schools at all or to assist with vision screenings. So that will be that will affect us. We don't know whether in some districts Lions Club members will feel safe, will want to help us, whether they'll be allowed in schools, whether parent volunteers will be allowed in schools, whether high school health occupation students might be available to us. So we'll just work with that as it happens. And then we know that the setup and the tear down of our new equipment this year, which we'll show a little bit later here in the presentation, will take us a little bit longer than normal too. So things will be a little slower. I guess this slide's also indicating. So we could probably look at the next slide. Oh yeah, and then just also, I already addressed that, maybe we will not be able to screen 2 schools in a day, both either logistically, depending on what happens. We'll have a lot more communication and administrative effort sort of coming out of our central office and even from our regional staff who are conducting the screenings, back and forth with school districts, postponing, rescheduling, collaborating with school districts on our, safety procedures and understanding and working with them on their protocols. Let's see here. And September through November is the busiest time frame in our vision screening schedule. We sometimes screen in a normal year 50 or 55,000 students in October. If all of those screenings are getting postponed, we'll be able to do it, but there'll be an interesting challenge in if we're going to be screening the schools that we already have in our schedule in, say, November and December and beyond, and figuring out how to reschedule those school districts that want to have screenings and fit them in the late fall, winter, and on into the spring. So that will be an interesting process for us. And as it says, we all know that uncertainty really abounds right now, and flexibility will be the key for success this year in serving all these students with such a critical service.
Thank you, Matt. And we've got a couple different questions that have come up in regards to the funding. One of which is, will we be monitoring the amount of funds that and of funding available for the reimbursement so that districts are not having to do that? Are we going to be able to help districts make sure that the screenings that they might be scheduling and that we might be working with them to conduct will actually be reimbursed?
Yeah, that's I think that's fairly, maybe it'll be more tricky this year to accomplish, but it's a process we normally do. So we kind of look at each year what we believe our own fundraising capacity, like Brad was talking about, kind of from the private sector, foundations, et cetera. We figure out what we can raise there and what our predictions are, and we look at what is also available at the state and how they're going to prioritize the resources that they have, and then from there we make a decision about what we're going to do. And since it's all of our work planning a year in advance is predictions, and we don't necessarily know what the reality will hold. We take some risk ourselves. We make a decision and we say, here's what we're going to support this year. Here's what we're going to communicate to school districts and at the beginning of the coming year, so that they know what will be funded upfront and what we're agreeing to do. And oftentimes, for instance, in school years where the funding didn't go far enough, we basically said, hey, we know that the state is going to support reimbursements for grades K through 3, and then grades 4 and up is funded by the state only if they have the resources available. That doesn't really line up with coming out and screening a K through 5 elementary school. So we would just, in our case, know that we could raise some funds from the private sector, and to make things easier and more flexible for everyone, we'll tell a school district, in a particular year, we're going to come out and we're going to screen that whole elementary school, and we're guaranteeing to you that either the Oregon Department of Education will reimburse you for that, or if there's a portion that they won't reimburse for, our organization is willing to subsidize that. So those are the kinds of communications that we have every year with school districts. We make sure if we're going to come out and screen, that you're not going to have a cost for that, or if there was any cost, like in a past year for a standalone high school event, that that up front and you have the option to either include that in your vision screenings or not. And I would just say one other thing we do or have done in the past is when the financial model was different, sometimes Lions clubs locally would sponsor and pay for an event, and sometimes school districts would. And that's still always the possibility. If there's an event we had to charge for, we can try to work with Lions to find out if they're willing locally to help sponsor the event. So our goal is always to make sure that school districts don't have costs for vision screenings.
Yeah, Matt, that's well put. And yeah, I do feel compelled that I need to jump in here to briefly mention that, this is a really unique public-private partnership that makes these school vision screenings possible for a school. And I appreciate that question. But the reality is, we worked really, really hard to create this public fund so that schools could get reimbursed. However, if for some reason that fund gets exhausted, we are not going to send, a collection agency after a school if there's no funds at the Department of Education to cover that cost. We will, though, very strongly nudge you and encourage you to submit your claim so that you will get reimbursed from that fund so that you can pay the invoice. But there will never be a time, and I'm saying this as the executive director of the Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation, there will never be a time where a school district schedules us, we do the screening, we send you an invoice, and if that fund is depleted from the Department of Education, we're not going to send you to collection. We're only going to ask you to pay if those funds are available. Our mission is to screen, treat, save, and restore sight and hearing. We're doing this work because it's why we exist. So please, while I appreciate the question, please don't have any anxiety over being left holding the bag, because that won't be an issue. And I'm going to go ahead and go away and only come back if needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Really appreciate that, because it is and has been our mission for quite some time and the full intent of this program. And we as Lions have invested quite a lot of time, money, and effort into this program and its success. And it is our goal to sustain that and keep it going. And we're certainly wanting to partner with the state and all schools in order to make this happen. And in fact, to that end, Brad has been working very hard with all of us in order to help us develop our new 6-foot screening model. And Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit to help address and talk about what we're doing.
Hey, thanks, Brenda. And here's the disclaimer. I am not the guy that came up with this. One of our field staffers down in Klamath Falls, Lion Steve Brewster, jumped on Amazon real quick and found this cool tripod and dolly set up for not very much money. And we are a nonprofit, and we got to work hard for the funding that we get, and so that mattered. So as you saw in that picture before, my old partner Warren screening that little kiddo at a library here in Portland a year or so ago, we already have a 3-foot screening distance. Our spot photovision screeners, as most of you school nurses and many of you Lions know, we got to be 3 feet away from the kiddo when we screen their vision. So we just needed to add to that. So what we've done is acquire this tripod and dolly setup and fabbed up a 30-inch plus PVC and threaded rod handle as a panning handle. So we have a good CDC recommended 6-foot distance between the screener and the student. So we have that long handle, helps us move forward, backward, tilt up and down. We're acquiring sandbags to add a little bit of more stability, a little bit of weight stability down there on the bottom to compensate for the couple of pounds of the spot. Here's a picture of what it's going to look like, and you can see that there's 6 feet between myself, boy, that's a rotten picture of me, and the student. That's my colleague Nicole over there, who's about the size of a middle schooler, and you can see that there's an easy direct 6 feet between us. We have a methodology developed where there will always be at least 6 feet and frequently 12 feet between the screener and the student. We'll still provide schools with stickers and student ID numbers to anonymize them and protect their identities. Those kiddos, just like we have before, will come in with that sticker on their shirt, but instead of handing it to the screener, they're going to put it on a piece of paper that's on a small table 6 feet away from where the screener stands. They'll step back onto their place, and the screener will step forward, get that number, feed it into the spot, step back. Everybody gets in their 6-foot distance, and we screen the kiddo. And as most of you know, that only takes seconds. And when we're done, we're done. Good job, kid. Just same as always before, except no more high fives. That's disappointing to some of us. And back they go to class, and the next kiddo comes up. We want to do this in the safest, most sanitary method that we can. Let's see, what's coming up next?
If we have any questions at all.
Any questions, please.
So one of the questions that we have is how will, you've got a demonstration there. I'm gonna let you do that, Brad.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Forward, back,
Yeah.
down, left, right. It's really pretty simple. It's not attractive, but it works.
And one of the things that I really like about it is that it looks like it is still relatively easy to transport around, because I know even once we get the equipment to the schools, having to move and set up, it seems as if we've got a good setup so far. I'm really pleased with what you all have developed for this. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
any other?
Brad said
Go ahead, Matt.
it wasn't attractive, and I would say it's actually quite attractive compared to just showing folks what a concept would look like very early when we had the spot on a cart that we kind of rolled back and forth. We had a concept to prove we could do it. Now we've created a prototype, and yeah, it looks great, I think, and it's going to work very well. So thanks, Brad.
Thank you very much for that.
And we're ringing Amazon out to get this equipment as soon as we can.
That was always fun when you have to find larger supplies and you have a bunch of different people making a lot of different purchases in order to get that equipment that we need. So it is kind of neat to be able to do that. And I would agree with Matt. I think it's pretty creative and therefore very fun to look at and see. So our next section that we have here is about the safety precautions that we're going to be taking. Some of those safety precautions that, as you can see with the equipment, we need to be careful with our staff, we need to be careful with our equipment going from school to school. So the two components that we have is A, the equipment itself. We've worked with, and I believe Matt can confirm this, the manufacturer to find out what's the best and safest way for us to be disinfecting and sanitizing our spot devices, which will be in the hands of our staff members when they are going from school to school. And they recommended 70% rubbing alcohol. We're going to get rubbing alcohol and spray bottles, and that equipment will be disinfected entirely between each operator and any high touch surfaces. We're going to spray those down with the rubbing alcohol in the hopes that we're able to keep our equipment clean and sanitized between uses. And since we have Brad, I know once you get it in your hands and you're set up and screening, you're there with the one piece of equipment for quite a while. So we hope that that environment is there. But what that means is, of course, our team is going to have to be wearing personal protective equipment. All staff, all volunteers, thank you, Brad, for showing that, will be wearing any masks. And volunteers, of course, we put this in here, but we do understand that volunteers may not be an option and that it may simply be our screening staff. And we are taking cautions and preparations in order to make sure that we've got enough of our staff members and people who are going out to events. We are going to have masks that are going to be required for all of our team members. Gloves will be available should anybody want to wear those or should they be required. And then we've got quite a lot of hand sanitizer for when washing hands is not an option, but the masks and the equipment and the face shields and gloves and all the different possible options. Brad, do you want to, because you've been wearing some of it for practice, do you want to touch upon what it is to wear that equipment and what it is as a field staff member to do so?
It's a little bit more than what many people would have expected, but it's not overwhelming. I've been wearing one of these pale blue surgical masks fairly consistently. I come to the office several days a week, and we want to be very safe here as well. And so we try and maintain distance, but sometimes we can't. So I've just been wearing this blue surgical mask most of the day for several weeks, and it's not a burden. It gets a little warm. You need to take it off every once in a while, take a deep breath. But as you can tell from watching, all of our experience, medical staff wear these things for hours and hours and hours all day long, day after day after day, and it's fine. And these nitrile gloves, if you want to wear those, they're simple, they're easy, they're comfortable. You get a little sweaty inside, but it's not a big deal. And our optical shop staff have been using face shields, and they forget they have them on. They're so comfortable.
Which I'm really hoping that as long as we are supplying all these, especially with disposable masks, that as we need to as breaks and, take a step outside and have lunch and do what we can so we can make it as comfortable and as safe as possible. One person asked, and maybe Matt or Brad, either of you could address this, is there a possibility that we may be going classroom to classroom for screening rather than being located in a central, say, gymnasium or look, and that actually leads right into the next slide as well. So Matt, could you address kind of preferring larger rooms, but the possibility of going classroom to classroom?
Sure. Again, this is kind of, as we start to screen, I think we'll be working very closely at those first several screenings to understand what's going to work for a district and what's going to work for us. We're going to each have our, own safety protocols and our own sense of what's going to work, and we're going to probably be tweaking that on a week by week basis to make sure we're doing everything we can to, keep people safe and efficiently screen. So currently, we're imagining that we're really going to focus or need larger rooms if we can keep our screening model the same. If we have enough again, staff, volunteers, support from the school, if we're going to have 4 lanes of vision screenings going as we have in the past, or maybe even if we only have 2, we're going to need some spaces where each station can be 6 feet from the other stations, and where kids are approaching the screening station and leaving the station, that they're still maintaining social distance. So I'm still imagining that we're going to need some larger spaces like gymnasiums and cafeterias. And we know maybe cafeterias will be more available, because it sounds like what we're hearing is that a lot of times lunches are going to be served in that classroom or with that cohort, and not necessarily in a larger cafeteria. So maybe cafeteria will be spaces that would be available. It may be harder to conduct screenings in smaller classrooms. Even in previous environments, we found that it was kind of difficult to go from a room to room, just because rooms have all the desks, and there's just, you need a little bit of open space to accommodate those screenings. So we'll see, but this is kind of what we're thinking right now.
And in my experience out there going from room to room, the very few times that I've done it, light adjustment in the room, and again, like you said, furniture adjustment, and there are other things going on in the classroom, so it's distracting. It's a little more difficult to do it going room to room.
From time to time, you don't usually need it during the screenings, but from time to time between screenings and in sort of the, what do you call it, the lull between, sometimes you need to plug in equipment depending on where it's at too, and that can be a little harder charging that equipment, but
yeah,
normally
the spots hold the charge well, but not all day.
Normally, yeah.
Yeah, so I do know that it's one of those things that it will be very dependent on the individual school and what it is that they're requiring, and the size of the school too will make a big difference for that. So a question that we had in regards to some of the safety equipment, we had one individual ask, does the touch screen work as well if a person is wearing gloves? And Brad, I didn't know if you'd had a chance to test that.
Yes, it does. It works with the nitrile gloves. We'll also supply our stylus pens, or Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation stylus pens that work really great. As a matter of fact, with the newest software that's on board our spots, it's the only thing that works besides your finger.
Yeah, I've got a little, like, it's hard to show here, but there's a little stylus, just a little soft rubber cap on top of this pen, and that works really well on the Spot devices.
Excellent. And not necessarily safety related, but kind of. We had one person ask, hey, Brad, where do you get that cool mask?
Oh, hey, that cool mask with our logo on it was made by the sister of our Board of Trustees chairman, Hank Calhoun, and he supplied a bunch of us to our office here. So maybe we can talk her into making more. We have a supply, and I'm not sure about the distribution plan for them all, but I just thought that was really cool of her. And we thank her and Hank and everybody that supports us in any fashion.
Certainly. I think they're still fun. I can't wait to get mine. So I'm excited. One of the other questions, or actually in this case, not a question, but a suggestion, is to consider the hallway area outside of a group of classrooms, that it might make student management easier as an option as well. So that's something to consider for some schools. So
Right.
at this point, oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, it's okay. Go for it. That makes sense.
Some looks like another comment here is some schools are talking about return to cohorts, or group A, group B, for example. They'll be attending on different days. And again, addressing kind of, will we be able to go out and screen at different schools at multiple, in multiple days or multiple occasions, to go out and capture screenings for all of the different students on there. And I think we did touch on that, but just to touch on it a little bit more about that variable school schedule, Matt.
Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, if school A only has half the students attend on Monday, and then the other half, say, attend on Wednesday, and if we are scheduled on Monday to go to school A and B normally, or sorry, school A, let's see, if we're scheduled to go to school A on Monday and school B on Wednesday, we may be able to go to school A and B on Monday and capture half of the kids, and then go back again to that school on Wednesday and capture the other half in that same fashion. Again, it's a little slower if we're driving to 2 different schools. It may be practical in some scenarios, it may not be in others. we'll be very flexible. We'll hope schools will understand and also be very flexible. If we already have 2 schools in a day scheduled and that's not possible, we'll do everything we can to figure out where those free spaces in our schedule are and come back out and get the rest of those students and go from there.
And that also touches very much on the additional communication that's going to be required with schools, and just kind of a reassurance to all those who are listening from schools. If you are already on the schedule, we will be reaching out to you just to follow up on what's doing, whether that needs to be postponed, whether it needs to be altered in some way, or whether we want to just discuss what options may be available to us. We want to make sure that each school is as comfortable as possible throughout the process. And our goal is, of course, just to screen as many kids as it is possible to screen within the parameters that you as the teachers and as the school administrators and as the school nurses are kind of directing. Our goal is to support you with what we're doing. So we are kind of coming to a time to wrap up and answer any other additional questions that people may have about it. The biggest question that I've been receiving is this going to be recorded and available later? And to reassure everybody that's on there, yes, this session is being recorded. We will have this available. I'll render the video this afternoon and we'll get it posted to our YouTube channel. But we want to take a chance to, answer any other possible questions, any other things that you might have out there about scheduling, and kind of give some final thoughts.
A quick commercial. These are available for purchase, okay? So go ahead and get in touch with us if you'd like one of these cool Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation face masks. Give us a shout out, and we'll let you know how much they cost and what we're going to do.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I know that we've got those, and to have some available, it's going to be fun to have those and get some branded ones.
And I'd also just related to what you just said here, Brenda, I would just further clarify. Yeah, we're going to kind of assume that most schools are going to be postponed for quite some time, in line with what we talked about. But we are definitely waiting to hear very specifically from each district and to have that dialogue just to confirm that that's the case before we really change our schedule at the moment. And as we reach out, if we don't hear back for some reason, we're going to go through a whole list of September screenings and make sure we're reaching out and have heard back about what's happening at your district, just so we can stay in very close touch with you about what's happening there.
Absolutely. This the main thing that I want to point out to everybody is that this is our longest running program to help students and to be out, and I shouldn't say necessarily longest running, but one of our largest programs, and it really is crucial to our mission that we are out there screening, because students of this age range, especially those younger elementary students, K through 3rd grades, that's where amblyopia and other eye conditions are able to be treated and vision can be saved. And it is really important to us to make sure that those screenings are available so that we can help to refer those students for further eye care. That is the ultimate goal. And so the main thing that I would want to put out to everybody there is, if you think their student might be having any issues at all with their vision, whether they've had a screening or not, there are programs out there to assist. The KX Kids Fund is still there and operating. That is something that we help to operate through our foundation, and it is something that provides exam and eyeglasses and care for students throughout Oregon. We do try and work with a wide variety of optometrists and pediatric optometrists, and providing care for them. And that's the ultimate goal of this particular program, is to refer those kids for that further care, to make sure that they are utilizing the vision that they have, that they're preventing vision loss, and that it helps them in their educational environment in the classroom. Brad, was there any final thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yes, please. It's really cool that we do have this nationwide, actually worldwide, reputation for providing the finest school-based vision screening anywhere. And that we can do hundreds of kids in a day, et cetera, et cetera. But the real deal is, we want to identify those kids who have vision issues so we can help them and their families get them the vision help that they need so that they can do better in school, reach their potential in their educations, and reach their life potentials. So that's what we're all about. And we've adapted, we've improvised, now let's overcome. We're in this together. Let's get through this together.
Thanks, Brad. I would add one further plug kind of about our team. We do have a new team member, Phoenix Chambers, who between me and them will be working with all the schools this year. So, you know, just wanted to put that out there to both Lions and school staff. You'll be hearing from one of the two of us this coming season to work with you about all these various issues that we're undergoing right now. So. Yeah, and we're here and happy to work with you. So
thank you so much. And I've got several compliments that have come across for all of us. We appreciate you, everyone listening in, everybody listening to the recording after the fact, everybody who has an interest in this program and supports this program. We're just really appreciative. And before we go, I just want to read this quote by Helen Keller. It really does kind of epitomize a bit of what we do here. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Helen Keller. So really appreciate that. And thank you all for your time today. And we look forward to working with you and seeing you this fall and later on this year. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
take care. Thanks for working with us.